Good morning and welcome to another UC Today webinar. Thanks for joining us. I am joined by Frank Paterno from PGI. How are you doing, Frank?
Hey, good. How you doing, Patrick?
Very well, thanks. Thank you so much for joining me for this webinar. And the topic today, it's a good one. It's the premise that UCaaS, so Unified Communications as a Service, starts with UX, user experience. And Frank, I thought for a starting point, I'd ask you to explain, first of all, what is UX? What is user experience?
Yeah, so the user experience, which often sort of gets misused with user interface as well. So we have a lot of acronyms being used here, but user experience is really the way the user is interacting with a particular app or solution, all the way from the beginning. So often from the provisioning process, how they acquire the service, then how they're using the service on a day-to-day basis, which often is interacting with either a computer-based app or a mobile-based app, or in our case, also telephones and mobile phones. And then all the way through even to what they do when they have questions or need support. So the entire user experience is really what UX is referring to. And then UI being the user interface, that is, typically the apps, that the look and the feel and the layout of the app they're using is often a very big portion of UX, but there is a bit of a difference between the whole experience and the interface specifically. So.
Yeah, that's an important point to differentiate, isn't it? So user interface is the sort of look, the aesthetic that user will be interacting with when they're within an application. But the user experience encompasses both the UI, but also several other aspects, like you were saying, in terms of support and functionality and those sorts of things.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's interesting, I would say 10 years ago or so, UI had a lot to do with look and feel, and maybe marketing often got involved in it. They wanted the products to look pretty and have logos and really be appealing. Today, that's really shifted. And for example, at PGI, we've got a pretty strong product design department that has a very big voice in what goes on. And sure, they're concerned that it looks nice, but they're way more concerned with how the user is going to interact with and what's easy. And so we've done a lot of, and I think a lot of good products out there have sort of decluttered the user interface and minimized the use of logos and graphics, and really focusing in on what do I need to do, where are the buttons I need to interact with this system, where are the status bars. So UI has really come a long way since being sort of this pretty design element into this very functional, very almost scientific portion of the overall product delivery.
Yeah, and what you were saying there ties into what I was going to ask, which is, I know at PGI you spent a lot of time on the overall user experience where in platforms like your Global Meet platform. So, and you touched on it there in terms of a simplified user interface. How do you ensure that a solution as a whole provides a good user experience overall?
It's a good question. So, the first thing that we needed to do is get out of our own box, right? I mean, we are a unified communications company. We are people that use these products day in, day out. So no matter how much we try to empathize with our user, we're not our user. Our user could be someone like us that uses these products every day. Our user could be somebody joining into a meeting that only does so once a quarter. And how do you put yourself in that person's position? So the very first thing we did several years ago was set up an arrangement where we have the ability to go out to our user community that we can profile. We can profile the demographic, the experience, and this is a wide group of people, so we can hit hundreds at the same time. And start putting prototype interfaces in front of them and asking them to do certain functions. Join into this meeting, mute your line, exit from this meeting, and we record them, and then we see, do they have success, and are they having success in a reasonable amount of time, 3-4 seconds? Are they not having success at all? And from those statistics, we're able to say, okay, this works or this doesn't work, and constantly retool until we get the most widely appealing user interface. What's interesting, and you can see this sort of in this graphic here, you can see sort of the comparison, because we not only prototyped our own application at the time, but we compared it against most of our competitors to see how are they interacting with other tools, and how can we make sure that we're pushing ahead. And by continuing to retool and increase the success factor, this is something that we're able to sort of confidently say, yeah, we've got the easiest to use unified communications tool out there, because we sort of have the stats and the data to back it up. But I think that all starts with getting out and making sure that the right people are doing this, and the right people are often not us and our own product design team. They're the moderators of this experiment, but not the participants.
No, that's a really good point, and it's easy for people inside a technology industry like yourself and myself to think, oh, this all seems relatively straightforward. But as you said, you want it to be intuitive for the user that might not be so tech savvy, so that they can easily use the platform as well, because that whole adoption piece is tied in, isn't it?
Tremendously. I mean, especially as you see the UC products out there now, that they have so much in them. There's so much capability. They are your phone system. They are your collaboration system. They maybe your messaging system. So lots and lots of functionality. Uh, but often, companies may have choices. They may have something they were using already, or all too often, especially in larger organizations, specific user communities within that organization may have a favorite. So the sales department may have a messaging app that they know and love, and they don't want to switch. So being able to go into an organization and recognize where they're moving from and to, and really work through a transition plan, or understand where there's not going to be adoption, and to say, okay, well, that messaging app is going to continue to persist for that user community. So then it turns into, how can the UC application integrate or maybe federate with some of those common third-party tools, and sort of how can we live alongside them? These are all considerations, that we've gone through, and within each customer implementation, try to understand what's going on, so that there are no false expectations. The worst thing that can happen is an IT department buys this big UC application, they put it out there, and then it gets very loosely adopted. And these are tools users need, right? So what's going to happen if they don't adopt it? They're going to go find something else. And you get this whole concept of shadow IT, where, the marketing department doesn't like the webcast tool, so they're going to go out and buy their own, and they have their own budget. They put their own budget line on there, and they're buying this application third party. But they're not necessarily thinking about security implications, or certainly uh, maybe scale of buying that the IT department could do. So lots of bad things can happen when there's poor adoption. So coming in early on, aligning with the IT department, making sure the IT department is listening to their users, or us as the provider sort of forcing our way to with the IT department to get to those big user communities, to make sure that this is a right fit and that it's being implemented correctly.
Yeah, and that whole adoption piece, which, as you said, obviously hinges on that user experience. As you touched on, you're absolutely right. If people aren't really enthused about using a platform, and if they don't understand how to use it, I mean, you mentioned examples of a marketing department maybe choosing a different webcast tool. As well as that, people within organizations might choose a consumer tool, which causes all sorts of other problems in terms of data compliance. So that UX and adoption piece really is critical.
Yeah, we see that all the time. And you're right, it's all too easy to go out and search for a tool, and you like the website and it's got a good demo, and you say, okay, this is going to be great for my org, and download it, and you send it out to your sales team or marketing team. And who knows, it may be a great tool, but like you said, maybe it's a consumer based tool. And there's a lot of things that IT departments should be thinking about for organizations: privacy, security, that are real things to think about. But end users, when they just need a tool to use, they're not thinking about that. So it's critical for us, not to mention the spend. If IT is buying a product and paying a certain amount of money for it, and they go through the business case and say, okay, well, we're going to get rid of all these other tools and standardize on this tool, that business case falls apart if some of those tools are not gotten rid of, or if users go out and find another tool and start paying for it. So even financially, it's a huge deal. And we've seen a shift in IT departments. I think, not to pick on them, but the IT department of 10, 15 years ago was a little bit more. They were able to mandate, we're buying this product and we're forcing this on our organization. In today's day and age, that doesn't work. The IT department needs to be a bit more sympathetic and understand their users. And we see that shift. We literally see that with companies of all sizes, where the IT departments are a bit more interested in what their users want, and then using that as criteria, even in RFPs and such, where the IT department is inviting the marketing groups, the sales groups, into that process to be able to help choose the right solution. So we think there's good cooperation from the customer communities out there, but it's definitely something to be aware of.
Yeah, and so we've established why user experience is so important as an aspect of adoption, and why adoption is so important in terms of overall deployment of technology solutions. One thing I wanted to ask you about, so your solution at PGI Global Meet is a UCaaS solution that encompasses several different aspects of what in a traditional infrastructure would effectively have been siloed separate systems. So you've got a calling functionality, meeting, what we might call modern collaboration in terms of chat and presence and all of those sorts of things. Does the fact that it's a multifaceted solution and it contains different communication methods make the user experience even more important? Because effectively the solution itself is, and the back end is more complicated. It's pulled all of these different areas together. Does it mean that the user experience needs to be even more simple for users to be able to navigate between them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think about the easiest way I think about this is on my mobile phone. And a lot of the apps out there are single function, right? So I pull out my mobile phone, I open the calculator, for example. That does one thing. It's a calculator. So the UI, yeah, it's important, but I know how to use the calculator. Um, Even the phone interface on our mobile phones, there's a keypad. I know what to do. I dial a number. But now when I have a UC application, as you said, it does a lot of things. It's not a single function application. And we wrestled with this early on, and put this out to our user community of prototyping to say, would they prefer separate applications? And that was a direction we heavily considered. Would a user group that adopted a UC solution, would they prefer separate apps for messaging and for collaboration and for telephony use? And the answer came back no. I do want a single app that can do it all. Okay, but now that I have a single app that does 6 different things, UX becomes really, really important, because how do I organize it so that when I want to message, I can, when I want to have a meeting, I can, but then also importantly, how do I bring them together? So when I am having and this happens every day, you and I might be having a chat conversation, and then we say, this is getting complicated. Let's just jump on a video call and talk about it. But we don't want to lose that chat, right? We had some good information on that chat, so being able to sort of move from one modality to another is very important. So organization and keeping things sort of organized and separated is important, but then being able to see how they work together, it's exponentially more important in a multifaceted application like UC. So I think you're right on that.
Yeah, and another area that we talked about in the planning for this webinar, and I think is slightly unique to PGI and Global Me, is you talked about this element of delighting the user and in a couple of quite unique ways. So I was interested to understand, how you do that and what sort of features and functions it can enable that sort of surprising user delight.
Yeah, and this is where it gets fun. This is where, okay, you've got all the basics covered. You've got a nice interface for people to use. You've created a good experience. Now let's sort of investigate, where can we put these little delightful experiences? Where can we save them a little bit of time that they weren't even thinking about? So one of the examples I like, uh, coming into a meeting. So you're setting up a big meeting. Maybe you've invited 12 people to that meeting, and now you're the host, right? So you're getting all ready. You start that meeting, and there's 8 people in there. Okay, well, who's not there? All right, so this is a moment of panic. Right now, I'm flipping back and forth between my calendar and my meeting application, trying to do a quick compare. Who's not there? And then go further to see, well, did they accept? Are they on holiday today? What's going on? This takes a lot of time, right? Could take 4 or 5 minutes. It brings my mind out of the meeting, so everybody that's in the meeting is sort of wondering, well, what's going on? You're wasting my time. It's expensive because you're wasting all of that productivity. So what the Global Meet application does is when the host comes into the meeting, it automatically offers them a quick compare. And we've done integrations with the calendar applications, so we know who they've invited, we know who's there, and let the platform tell you, okay, these 3 people haven't showed up, and these two have accepted, and this one declined. So very, very quickly, and as a bit of a surprise, I can see, oh wow, look, Global Meet's helping me out here. Patrick's not here, and I need to wait for him. So let me stall a little bit. So just a little bit of a surprise, a little bit of a fun thing, something I didn't expect. Maybe something I look forward to using the next time. But we like to find those little areas in there that are going to save you a little bit of time, maybe something you haven't seen before. That's really where I think we start to pull apart. And these are the experiences users remember. As they're using different tools, the basics are expected. These little fun, additional delightful experiences, I think, is what they remember. And whether we're using personal apps or we apply those experiences to business apps, we're sort of starting to expect that, right? We're starting to expect opening up an app and getting a little bit of a surprise or an Easter egg. So that's a fun area for us, something where we are continuing to put more of those in there.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting you talk about that user expectation. You're absolutely right. And we talked about tech savvy and not tech savvy earlier on, and both you and I, we work within technology. You do expect all of these things, but when there is a little additional feature, a little surprise, something that saves you a little bit of time, it does bring a smile to your face, and it does potentially endear you to a platform a bit more. Yeah. So it all ties back into that adoption and user experience piece.
That's absolutely true, and we see that in some of the interviews and surveys and this sort of prototyping process, that those are the things people remember. They're not going to remember and give you great credit for the fact that they tried to make a call and it worked, and that's just expected. So these little different areas are you're right. They bring the smile. We look for the smile, and that's often what we see cited as, hey, this is a great app because, and they bring up these little things. So. It's finding those areas that's key. Implementing the tech is often pretty easy. So it's the real key is understanding your user, watching them through the process, and then identifying those areas where you could plug those little pieces in.
And while we're on user expectation, we were talking about things that you might expect as sort of table stakes that you can call when you want, you can join a meeting or a video call when you want. Technology is developing all the time, and I know you guys at PGI spend a huge amount of money on research and development and all those sorts of areas. So as we move forward, the technology potentially is only additions are going to be made. These solutions like Global Meet, the UCaaS solution, the back end is effectively, the technology is going to become more complex. So the importance of a good user experience is going to be heightened, isn't it, as we go forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is going to be expected, and a lot of the consumer-based apps, especially the mobile apps, are making us used to this. Even think about something like a banking experience, where that was a very manual experience. It was a very in-person experience. The initial electronic experiences were banking, where you were just happy you can accomplish this, but now those applications are actually interesting and useful, and even to stay on the financial aspect, filing sort of taxes and things like that. This was an arduous experience. This was terrible. But then you have these products that come in with these wizard-based applications, very nice looking. It's all around us in every aspect of our life. So I think having a great user experience today is a differentiator. Tomorrow, I think it's expected. We are, and the ones that don't have are going to be quickly dropped, because you're right. In all aspects of our life, we're looking for these, and we're becoming more familiar and expected of a great user experience. And it's going to be very obvious where there's not one, and where a product is just too hard to use, and it's going to be quickly just abandoned.
No, well, it's really fascinating to hear about how important the user experience is to you guys at PGI. So if the viewers and the listeners want to find out a bit more about this, Frank, what's the best way for them to do that?
The best way is check us out at pgi.com, or any of the social platforms where we're sharing not only just information about the product, but information about the experiences that our users are having with the product, little videos, little scenarios, and maybe giving ways for you, the viewers, to sort of connect with, okay, yeah, we have that, we need a product like that, or we have that scenario. So yeah, that's the best way. And then lots of ways to contact us and get in touch with us all around the globe. So we've got local people ready to talk to you wherever you are.
Excellent. Well, Frank, for the meantime, thank you so much for joining me in this webinar.
You too, Pat. Have a good day.